Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode I am tackling something I've been putting off for quite a while that's actually going to be quite complicated. The steering column. Alright guys, welcome back, and those of you watching last week will have seen that I was working on a lot of the wiring under the dash of the car, putting in my fuse and relay box and sort of wiring up the ECU and a bunch of those connections that I needed to sort of sort out and finish off, and I got a long way. Glad that a lot of you are actually sort of interested in wiring. I know a lot of people get daunted by it, but it's a vital part of the car. If you missed it, I'll put a link up above so you can catch up, and please think about subscribing. It does help out the channel. That brings me to what I'm doing today. So today I need to do something about the column in this car, the steering column, particularly how I'm going to finish it up, how I'm going to get a lot of these systems to work. So I've got indicators, I've got lights, all switched from the column, and I've got ignition. And then I've got a cover for it. So there's lots of things to think about. Now, that would be fine if I was using the factory column, but I'm not, because as you might have seen, I had to change from the steering box to a steering rack. And so I've used Toyota parts. I've got Toyota electric power steering in there. And yeah, I could potentially try and use something like this, a big ugly Toyota center column, which is horrible. I don't want these ugly plastic stalks. It doesn't match what the era of the car. This whole thing is giant and not very pretty. And ultimately, it doesn't do the things the way it's supposed to anyway, because at least in Australia, I'm not sure how it is everywhere, but in Australia, Japanese cars have the indicators on the right-hand side, and European cars in Australia have the indicators on the left-hand side. And this, of course, being a Toyota, it's Japanese, the indicators are on the wrong side to what it is in this car, and yeah, it's not going to work. So that is out. So that brings me to the stalks that I have for the Alfa. Now, these are the original stalks. You can see they're sort of these very basic little rods with a plastic tip on them, but this does not fit this steering shaft. It's completely different. And actually, even up until this morning, until about 5 minutes ago, I was ready to start pulling apart the Toyota steering column and using bits and pieces of the Toyota steering column and using the indicator switch to use on this car. Because one of the things that this car is not a YouTube build, like some of them where it's close enough, it looks good, but it doesn't actually work. I want this car to work and do everything properly. And it's easy enough to put a switch for an indicator in, but to get the indicators to cancel, that is something that I really want to happen. And I kept looking at this setup that I had, and I didn't have the cancelling thing, because a lot of cars have like a little sort of a little plastic mechanism that comes in, and when the indicator's on, it comes in and it pushes and turns the indicator off when you turn the steering wheel back the other way. So up until this morning, I was ready to mess around with the getting a Toyota indicator switch to work and getting the cancelling system from that, because I really hate having indicators that don't self-cancel. And these Alfas did. From my research, a lot of people have got Alfas, had them for years, and the indicators never cancel, and they didn't know why. And it's actually quite a simple and brilliant system that Alfa used on these cars to cancel the indicators. And that is that there is this long spring here on the end of the indicator stalk, and this would actually be wrapped around the steering shaft itself, and just the friction of that spring on the steering shaft as you turn the steering wheel back would be enough to cancel the indicator. Very simple, and after considering scrapping this whole thing, I think I can actually modify this to fit that steering shaft. And that's what I'm going to start tackling right now. So with just a little bit of trimming in behind this original mount, I've been able to fit it onto the end of the Toyota steering column and wrap the spring around the steering shaft, put the steering wheel back on again, and I'll turn the indicator on, turn the steering wheel like you're using the car, and then it cancels. Indicator the other way, turn it on, and it cancels. It works. That's amazing. It's so simple. I was ready to spend at least half a day messing around trying to get indicators to work on this car, trying to get a self-cancelling mount and stuff done, and it's taken me 5 minutes. I love how simple this is. It's simple, but it works. Whether the indicator, some of the time it wasn't sitting on all the way, like it was springing back, there may be a little bit too much friction. That's a matter of, because too much friction and it will turn the indicator on every time you turn the steering wheel, not enough friction and it won't cancel the indicators. So it's a matter of getting the balance right, but I think that's technicalities I can play with. The principle works, which is amazing. So now, the stalk is too short, or at least in the wrong angle. That's something I'm going to have to tackle. But for the time being, the indicators work. So now I need to start making some sort of mount to be able to mount this bracket to this column. Okay, so you saw me spending a little bit of time then designing up in CAD the mounting brackets I need to hold those indicators on, and now it's time to cut them out. And this is something that I've had sort of quietly down the back here for a little while now, while we've been developing it. But I've been working with World Class, and they are working on building a small CNC plasma table. And this is not it. This is another unit, but using their plasma cutter. And this is a good little home unit that's all set up, and I can cut out 600 by 600 CNC plasma stuff up to sort of 10 mil thick. So this is what I've been using in the background for a while now, and it is a really cool, handy piece of gear because I can just spend 10 minutes drawing up something to the exact measurements I need, and then whip it out with the plasma table. So it's using World Class's 45P, which is a sort of CNC setup plasma cutter, and it works a treat, and it is speeding up my ability to make really neat, really accurate brackets like that. And if I can sort of draw something up and cut it out, and if it's slightly out of shape, it's not exactly what I want, I can just quickly alter it and cut it out again and get the exact piece. So I am very happy to have this on board. It is such a handy thing. 600 by 600 is, there's some things I could potentially want something bigger, but that's quite a big bit. So I can do quite large brackets and set up to sort of 10 mil thick. My main thing that's holding me back at this stage is that I don't have enough power to this shed. I don't have three-phase power. I've only got the regular Australian 240 volt power coming to this shed. So I'm sort of, I've tripped everything out like that because basically it needs the air compressor running at the same time as the plasma cutter. But anyway, let's get this set up now and see if we can cut out those little brackets that I just designed. All right, well, these things turned out great. So they do need a little bit of just grinding off the slag off of the back. They the plasma leaves a little bit to desire. It's not as precise as, say, a water jet cutter or a laser cutter, but still does a very, very nice job. And these now fit beautifully with my indicator stalk. So basically what I've got is I've got two different ones. This one will bolt onto these back holes, and then I've got this one at the front that will bolt onto the front holes. And they go on like so. There's one back there, and one on there, like so. So now all I have to do is just weld in some captive nuts and weld it onto the steering shaft itself, and then I've got at least the indicator portions mounted. So easy. All right, so we have that all mounted. It's all painted up and fitted, and this all works. The indicator is on. You can see how the spring is wrapped around the steering shaft, just like it is in the Alfa. Such a brilliant design. And if I slide the steering wheel on, I can flick the indicator on, turn the wheel, and it cancels. Flick the indicator on that way, and we have a cancelling indicator. So anyway, now we have the lights and indicators and stuff sorted out. Now we need to work out how we're going to mount a key to this. Okay, so fitting the key barrel to the car. I actually have a Toyota key barrel here with a Toyota key. I don't want a Toyota key in an Alfa Romeo. I could, as I said, I could swap this over and use the barrel and the key and all that sort of stuff. I don't want to do that. I want to keep the Alfa key. This is, I have the original key and the barrel here, so I'm going to use it. But obviously I need to be able to get this and mount this to that column, and that is going to be a bit of a challenge. But for starters, I need to be able to get this off of the column because it's got an anti-tampering sort of fitting here that I need to try and cut off. So that's the first thing, is I need to get this off of this column and see how we can go mounting it into the Alfa. All right, so that wasn't too difficult. I just managed to cut a slot in that little nub, and it was actually, looks like it's just a like M5 or M6 bolt, basically, that I could just knock around and unbolted. So that is a nice option. Now, this little nub that comes out the side, spring-loaded nub, is actually part of the original steering lock. I'm not going to reinstate that. There's no easy way to do that with the using the Alfa lock on the Toyota steering column, and I'm not that fussed about it anyway. It doesn't really bother me. What I'm going to do now is I need to sort of find out exactly where I need to mount this in the car. And to do that, what I really want to try and do is I've got to try and see if I can reuse these factory covers. Now, I was going to make my own new ones, but I think I can actually salvage these enough to recover them and use them in the car. But it means I need to gut them and cut and paste and see how we go. So let's start modifying. All right, so I've done a bunch of trimming on the back of this original housing. Like I said, it's broken, it's not perfect anyway, so I wasn't too concerned about ruining an original piece. So how I'm going to actually hold it together and actually get it to stay in the car is something I have to work out later, because these things, all of my cars, all these old cars, they always seem to break the bolts that hold them together, so they're just loose and don't line up. I don't like that, and that's not going to stay the way in this car. I'm going to make sure it works, but I've trimmed it out now, and it fits. It actually fits in the car, so that is all looking good. So now I want to try and line up my keyhole so it fits in the same hole that it originally did. So I need to be able to make a mounting for that. Now, let's try that. All right, so I just cut the end of where the steering lock sort of would normally lock into the steering column, and just to give it enough clearance so that it can actually sort of line up where I need it to on the current steering shaft, because obviously this is no longer going into a steering shaft. But I still want to make a mount, and I managed to find this piece of nice thick wall steel tube that is just too tight for mounting my key barrel, which I think is perfect, because what I can do is I can cut a piece of this off, put it on the lathe, space it out, and then I can weld it onto the existing column in there. So then you can actually just sort of bolt in the steering lock, and it'll all fit and match and look sort of like the original Alfa one did. All right, that works. It's bolted in, it's nice and solid to the car, so I actually have the lock in place. So let's put the cover on and let's see if it all goes together. All right, well that is actually coming along quite nicely. So I've just taped this together for now. I have a bit of a plan of how I can make this removable without being relying on the bolts that are always broken and things like that. I've got a bit of an idea, but I have the dash cover there, and it's actually doing most of the job. And I can have a little flap coming down under here like a lot of modern cars do, you know, to cover up some of this stuff. So I am very, very happy. This has taken me so much less time than I had budgeted for. I thought this was going to take forever, maybe a couple of weeks, a couple of episodes on this one thing. And I think I've done it in one episode, which I am over the moon about. Okay, so the last thing I need to tackle with this column is a horn. And to be able to make the central horn button work, I could do it the easy way and put a button somewhere else, but that's not really what I'm looking for. So how most horn buttons work is they normally have a little sprung steel plate that sits on the ring on the bottom of the Boss kit, and so it doesn't matter if the steering wheel spins, it's still obviously making an electrical connection, and it's a ground switch to the column in the center of the car. Some are slightly different. Some have an isolated switch in the center, but in my case, it's going to be a ground switch. So what I came up with is I was looking around the garage trying to work out where I could get some spring steel, and I found these things that I've got clipped up all around the headliner of the car, and I cut one up, and basically I've got a nice curved spring steel top end. I've drilled a hole in it, and I've cut a tab on the other side that I can slide an electrical connector onto. And then I found this was a clip that had tabs on it. This is actually a little trim clip like you would find on a wheel arch liner or something like that, where you've sort of, you know, it's a plastic clip with a little plastic pin that goes in the middle of it. So I've set this up so that I can use the bolt, but this will help isolate this little piece so that it's not actually grounded to the car by bolting it on. So I can use the bolt that's already here and stick it in, and hopefully I can get this in the right spot so that I can just wire up and use this for my horn. All right, I've got my power scanner set up here so that I can try and see if it'll complete a circuit and whether the horn works. It's connected up and it works. It does the job. Oh, that has come together so much quicker than I expected. I was thinking this whole job was going to be a nightmare. I was going to have to build a custom cover and the whole lot, and that's so surprising. Something that's supposed to be really complicated actually turned out to be quite straightforward. Yeah. Because it's taken so much less time, I think we may as well wire up the column and see if we can get the power to go to everything where it's supposed to. Let's do that. All right, so I've gone through now and actually I've wired up all of the light switches. So what I did to check everything is I went through and connected up my power probe. And basically the way I've set this all up, the PDM that I'm using, the little tiny Mo unit which is hidden up underneath here, that requires ground switching. So basically what I've done is I've got a ground signal coming in here. It comes in, and when you connect the circuit, so turn an indicator on, it then sends the ground back through to the Mo unit, and that will activate the light circuit. And basically that acts like a relay box, so you don't actually have to run relays for the that little PDM. All right, so the next thing I've got to do is wire up this ignition barrel. Now there's a bunch of connections on the back here. Now I haven't set up an accessories circuit. So normally your fan and stereo and stuff like that would be on accessories, and the difference between accessories and sort of regular on, is that when you click it over to start, the accessories circuit is disconnected so that it doesn't draw power where it doesn't need it to run the fan and things like that. So it has all the power going to the starter motor it can. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to have to manually make sure that there's not fan and too many things on if it struggles to crank. I may go back and do that later. Honestly, it's because I forgot to set it up that way. When I was doing it all in my head, I forgot completely about that circuit, but we'll see how it runs, and I can always mess around and rewire that later if I need to. But I don't want to tackle all this again, so I'm just going to run it as I've got it and hope it works. All right, so I'm very happy with that. I managed to work out the wires I needed on the ignition, but I wired it all and then realised I'd messed up because the start signal for the starter motor actually is... I still messed up. Damn it! The start signal from the key needs to go to my Mo unit, so it needs to be an earth switch. And I just realised, I thought I'd fixed it, but then I realised that the start that actually goes to the fuse box, that I actually have set up as positive, so I have to change that wire around so that it actually is negative. Let's pull it apart, let's get it done. Oh, all right, thankfully that wasn't too difficult, and I've rewired it already and basically ground switched the relay that triggers everything instead of the power switch. So that is sorted, and I am so much further along than I thought I was going to be. I had a feeling this was going to take me a couple of weeks. I was thinking I'd have to make a custom surround and all sorts of stuff, but it's actually gone together quite nicely. And most of my wiring is done now. The only things I've really got left, I've got to connect up the cruise control switches, which I've ordered, and they'll come into the dash. That's pretty easy. There's only a couple of switches there. I've got my accelerator pedal, and then I've got the dash wiring, and that's sort of all I've got to do under here now. And it might still seem like a lot. It's not. I'm really, really happy. I've gone a long way, and getting this column done was a huge step. Sorting this out is just, I am very, very, very happy with the outcome. So Anyway, I think that's definitely all the time I have this week. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, in 1999, Ferrari released the replacement for the 355 with the 360 Modena. The 360 Modena was a coupe named after the town in which, of course, Enzo Ferrari was born. Ferrari partnered with Alcoa to produce an all-new aluminium space frame chassis, which was 40% stiffer and 28% lighter than its predecessor. It was powered by a 3.6-litre flat plane crank V8, making 400 horsepower. In 2000, the convertible 360 Spider was released. Now, 360s are available with either a manual 6-speed gated gearbox or an F1 automated manual gearbox. In total, 8,800 Modenas and 7,565 Spiders were produced. In total, only a third of those were actually gated manuals. However, that was the total number produced worldwide, and thankfully, one of them was kind enough to donate its engine to the Alfarrari. And you probably can't see it, but there's actually a ladybird on it at the moment. I say ladybird, Jeff says ladybug, because we grew up in different countries. But it's also yellow and black, which is unusual colouring. Anyway.
All right, that was very successful. I was very happy with getting that dash around in. I honestly thought it was going to take me so much longer, and it just.
It's one for the books. Sometimes it just goes in your favour.
Very rarely. Usually things are like, man, that was a lot more work than I expected. This is one that actually, I was expecting that was going to be a couple of weeks. I'm going to make a custom fiberglass surround and all sorts of stuff, and it it flowed and moved, and I was like, pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, it's so nice when it happens.
So rarely on this project. 3 years in.
Well, subscribe, especially if you want to hear more about flora and fauna that morphs into Alfarrari colours.
Yeah.
Very unusual, but hey, that's how we roll. And let Jeff know what you think. Let us read your comments. Of course, we want to help him out. Patreon is always available. Anyway.
We'll see you next week.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
See you guys.
Which was 40% lighter and 28% stiffer than its predecessor. It's the way around, isn't it?
Yes.
Damn it. 3.6 litre flat plane V8 crank V8.
Yes.
Crank that V8. In 2000,